The latter half of our day is not any less jam-packed than the first half of our afternoon. In fact, there are many, many highlights to come, starting right now with our second fireside chat of the day, which I'm going to be having with Vivek Ranadivé, who is just one of these incredibly multifaceted people that you run across when you study the digital economy and you're privileged enough to hang out at places like MIT and San Francisco and Silicon Valley. Vivek is the founder and CEO of TIBCO Software, which is how many of us probably know him, but the man wears a number of other hats as well. He is a best-selling author several times over of books related to the power of technology. He is a bachelor's and master's graduate from MIT, an MBA from a school that may not be named here, where he was one of the top scholars. A co-owner of the Golden State Warriors basketball team, and in his own right, a legendarily successful basketball coach. I'd like to welcome Vivek to the stage, and please come join me.
Thanks, Andrew.
Vivek, the only appropriate first question is, when do you sleep?
I actually sleep a lot, but I did want to say before we started, because I know that Tom Siebel was on before me, and he's a good friend, one of the smartest guys I know. He's got this great company. And I don't know if Tom's still in the audience, but every summer we would go to his ranch in Montana. His daughter and my daughter and Tom and a couple of other people. And he would always kick my butt at Cranium. And so I've always wondered whether he was cheating the whole time.
Yep.
And whether he had memorized the cards. So Tom, if you're here, I want to know. But
so hopefully the truth will come out.
Right.
And I do think that when Tom Siebel refers to you as the real deal, that's an endorsement that has some weight behind it.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's kind.
I want to start, and I'm gonna pepper Vivek with some questions for a while, and then we'll throw it open for questions from the audience. I want to start with your journey to MIT, because as I understand it, it's actually kind of an interesting story. Can you walk us through how you got to Cambridge?
Sure. When I was, my interest in technology was first sparked when I was a little boy in Bombay, and it was July 1969, and I had my ear plastered to the radio. And I was listening to the moon landing. And I heard Neil Armstrong utter the immortal words, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
Good. You heard that basically live.
I heard that live in Bombay on the radio. And it was at that moment that I decided that I wanted to dedicate my life to science and technology, and that I wanted to go to America. And you know, if you think about that, you know, more than 40 years ago, they were able to put a man in a box and send him to a rock 250,000 miles away. And they had, the entire NASA space program had less computing capacity than we have on our mobile device today.
Yep.
And so it was at that moment that I said, you know, this is like unbelievable. I want to go to America. What amazing people, what ingenuity, what perseverance, you know, just what. And so that was how that is when I decided that. And then, you know, a few years later, I applied to MIT.
Yep.
And MIT must have made a mistake in the admission process, and
okay, hands up. How many of us feel like admissions mistakes, at least on the way in? I'm willing to cop to that.
I was a mistake.
Great.
I was a mistake, and basically showed up with $50 in my pocket, and MIT took care of me. So.
And you stuck around for a master's.
I stuck around for a master's.
Can you tell us what impressions or what lessons or what you think the Institute left you with or gave to you?
MIT to me has always been an amazing place, and even when I was in Bombay, I saw this documentary and about how they had this independent activities period, where
you go skiing for the month of January.
Right. Or you could actually work out a project.
Do stuff. Okay.
Yeah, and coming as a boy growing up in Bombay, where you just took classes, the concept that you could actually work on projects and solve problems.
You mean as opposed to just sit there and receive knowledge that had been predetermined?
Exactly. And so So MIT has just always been this amazing dream for me where what I really learned from there was how to think and how to solve problems, how to connect the dots, and also just the importance of surrounding yourself with really, really smart people. Because I was the dumbest guy at MIT, and everybody around me was a lot smarter. So when
I've taken that mantle over for you, you'll be happy to know. The torch has been passed.
Right. No, I know you're a very smart guy, Andrew. So.
When I think about TIBCO, the phrase that keeps recurring to me is, you guys were big data before big data was cool, right?
That's true.
Can you talk, I guess, about two things? First, where the idea for an information bus, or how you became aware of this crying need, which was not obvious back then. And then second, what you think of the state of the big data, the concept, the meme these days.
Yeah. So my own background was, I was in 6-1, so I was a hardware engineer.
Okay.
And working in the computer industry many years ago, I became frustrated with how software was done. It seemed like the hardware was always on time and always on budget, and the software never worked. Now, I can't say this in Palo Alto because I'm surrounded by software engineers at my company, but I think hardware engineers are basically smarter than software engineers. So see, there's some software engineers out there.
That might show up in the tweet stream, Vivek. I just want you to know that.
But the way that they built software was, it just never worked. It was always over budget. It never did what it was supposed to do. And if you looked at a piece of software and you put it under the microscope, then 70 to 80% of the actual code was infrastructure, and then you did the application. Then you built another application, you recreated infrastructure, then you had to build a bridge to connect them together, and then you built another application, you had to, N systems, you have to build basically N squared back and forth bridges. And so the notion I had was, why not just do what hardware engineers do, where if you look at a computer, if you look at the PC, there's a backplane or a bus, and you plug cards into it, and you don't have N squared, you just have N interfaces. And so that was how I came up with the idea of a software bus.
And you must be encouraged by, it's still not easy, but how much easier it is to do that in the worlds of XML and web services and open APIs and all that. It kind of feels like the industry has caught up to that insight.
Well, I think it has, and another hardware idea I borrowed was that of interrupts. And so the model of computing that had been in use before that was more of a request-reply model. And so you asked a question, you got an answer. And with hardware, you had real-time interrupts. And so that's where I really pioneered the notion of becoming event-driven. So when something happened, when a stock price changed, when a bottle of aspirin came off a shelf, anything happened, somebody put out a tweet, then those were events. And those events went on the bus, and then people or applications or systems that needed to know about it could do something about it.
So you have this kind of cool bird's eye view of the state of the digital economy. Your company's been around a good long time. You've worked with companies in almost every industry that I can think of. Can you tell us what parts of the economy you think are getting it, and which ones are lagging behind in their awareness of the power of the information bus and big data and digital stuff all told?
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing even within industries is kind of the quote Charles Dickens, it's a tale of two cities. It's the best of times and it's the worst of times. So even within an industry like retail, there are companies like Macy's that are getting the power of big data, the power of real time, the power of looking at every interaction and making the offer to the customer before they leave the aisle or before they put their wallet back in their pocket, not 6 months after they're gone. I think there's industries like retail that are really getting it. I think healthcare, government are the ones that are still far behind. And I think even within industries, there's people that get it and there's people that don't. And I think the biggest misconception that people have is there's people in places like Redwood City that will have you believe that big data equals big database. But in fact, a database is like a phone.
We have no idea what he's talking about, oddly enough.
Yeah. Well, he didn't get the basketball team either. But, but big data.
What does big data equal?
Yeah, so just, the database to me is like a phone that doesn't ring. So something happens and it goes into the database, but nobody else knows anything happened. So you have to keep querying it.
Okay.
And so there's two kinds of data, right? There's data at rest and there's data in motion. And trying to just look at data at rest, you're looking at old data. And I was talking a few years ago to the head of a bank, and he said, Vivek, my infrastructure is probably as big as the web. I have more computing capacity, and I have more network, and I have more storage. And I said, well, if that's true, then how come when I go to your ATM machine every Saturday, and I put my ATM card in, the first question it asks me is, what language do you want to communicate in?
Sure.
And I'm like, dude, I haven't learned Spanish since last week. I still speak English.
Yeah.
So, really, if you think about it, we are locked up in these 20th century architectures. And in the future, we have to be able to look at both what's happening right now and history.
Okay, but that's a great example of I think, a deep question. Why does software still stink so much? You started your career with that insight. Yeah. You go to an ATM, it still thinks that you might have swapped languages.
Right.
Is software a lot better than you noticed 20, 25 years ago? Or are you still finding it super frustrating? And if so, why?
I think that I really haven't done a good job. I think that, if you think about it, so now, we know what kind of cheese Shaq has on his sandwich because of his tweet. But, planes are still falling out of the sky. The ATM machine still wants to know what language I speak.
Yep.
Bags are still getting lost. We still have food shortages, water shortages, pandemics, security problems. And it's still really not that easy to use things. And to me, even things like Google are gigantic legacy systems. Because you look for something and you get so many things back, and you still have to be looking for things. Things don't find you. Things are not.
Do you have clarity on what it's going to take to make that situation better?
I think that over the next 10 to 20 years, it is becoming better. We're going to a world of hyperconnectivity. We're going to a world where there's going to be, 1 trillion things connected, and just as the bond market is a lot bigger than the equity market.
Yes.
The world of device and applications and systems talking. So we move on our backbone more things in a day than, say, Twitter moves in a month.
Okay.
And so we're entering an era where ubiquitous computing, hyperconnectivity, being real time, where really, what we need to do is we need to bring context to it. And so we've been living in a two-dimensional world.
Yep.
And so we're looking at rows and columns. But with big data, what's going to happen is you have massive amounts of data, and it keeps growing exponentially.
Okay.
But the shelf life of that data keeps coming down. And the amount of time that you have to do something about it is coming down even faster.
Yep.
So we can't use 20th century models. And so we can't just use 2 dimensions. We can't just use rows and columns anymore. So we have to go to a 3rd dimension, and that is context. And so as things become more contextual, then we're going to start seeing real value out of all of this.
Do you think that we have a complete or nearly complete technology toolkit to help us in this hyper-connected, unbelievably big data, short response world? In other words, are you happy with the way the technologists are doing their job to build tools to help us with this new world?
I think we're doing a better job, but the hard work is still ahead of us. And again, going back to my Neil Armstrong story, the poor guy, we sent him with 4K of RAM, and he landed on the moon. Okay, 4K of RAM.
Yeah.
So now, every person in this room has, a million times 64 gig in their iPhone. Yep. And now, I can find out how my basketball team is doing, or you can find out if you're hot or not. But, surely, there's a lot more we can do with it. And so I think we're only just starting to do it. And I think one of the things is, if the 20th century was the century of science, I think that the 21st century will be the century of math. And I think that math will trump science. And what I mean by this is that you don't really need to know the why of something. You just need to know the why, that if A and B happen, then C will happen. And so when researchers were trying to find how the AIDS virus mutated, scientists spent years and they couldn't figure it out. Then about a year ago, somebody made it into a math problem and they put it into a game called Fold It.
Yep.
And within a week,
Yep.
they had found the pattern. And so I think that we're right sitting on the precipice of great advances and great innovations.
So this is another really deep question. We hear about the end of science or the diminished importance of this work of studying cause and effect and trying to build theories versus the work of just looking at great big amounts of data to find patterns.
Yes.
I'm hearing you think that there's more productive territory in that latter world.
Yeah, and even in the business world, I can give you so many examples. We had a client in Europe and they had a problem with credit card fraud and they couldn't figure it out. So we applied our big data analytics to it, and what we found is that if you buy champagne, razor blades, and diapers, it's probably a stolen credit card. Now, you can go back and try to explain it and say, it makes sense. Champagne, well, it's a big ticket item, it's easy to pawn off.
Okay.
Same with razor blades. Well, then why diapers? And say,
Thieves have kids too.
Well, you think he's a good guy if he has kids. And so it's a way of like, hey, I'm a good guy, I'm a dad. Masking it. And you can still pawn off that.
Okay, but what you're telling us is that that's a post hoc rationalization for the pattern in the data.
Yeah, there's no way that I could have sat here and figured that out. But by looking at the math of it and finding the pattern, then you can go back and try to explain it. And so we have another client where they were trying to solve the problem of churn with telcos. So they add 5 million customers every month, but they drop 2 or 3 million.
Great.
And what we found is really simple, and this was in India, that if you drop 6 calls in a 24-hour period, you're probably going to switch services. So we pick up every event, every drop call, and after the 5th drop call, we offer free SMS messages. If
you don't know why you're about to leave us, but you are.
And we do this in a number of industries. So I did this for another MIT grad, Gary Loveman. He has a place called Harrah's.
He does.
And we completely...
One of the geekiest CEOs outside the high-tech sector you'll ever
MIT,
meet.
PhD.
Loyal son of MIT.
Exactly. PhD math. And I just made his whole business put the bus in, and I have everything on the bus, including every slot machine.
Yep.
So now, when you're playing the slot machine, I know when you're going to be unhappy, even before you're unhappy. And I know.
And when is that?
Well,
probably if I keep losing.
Well, we kind of have a gradation, and so depending on whether you're a platinum customer or what you are, we pick up every event, every pull of the slot machine, and we predict. So we can use tools to predict that for your category of person and who you are and your patterns of behavior, you're going to get unhappy when you lose this money.
Whereas for a different kind of customer, you might not get unhappy about losing that same magnitude.
That's right.
Okay.
It's person by person.
Yep.
And then just before you lose that, we know that...
A drink will show up.
Well, we know that the buffet where you like to eat is empty, and the magic show you like to see, you like magic shows, and there's 4 empty seats in the front row, and I can't inventory seats at a magic show. Bloop. So then all of a sudden, this young lady walks up to you and says...
Chunk.
And she's called a luck ambassador, and says, "Sir, we've got some great news for you. Here's."
You're about to be unhappy.
Yeah. No, you're going to be happy. You're getting free tickets to a magic show.
But not anymore.
Yeah. So basically, we're entering this era of big data.
But the story you're telling is actually a really fascinating story, because I don't hear you telling a story about we need to ignore theory building and cause and effect totally. What you're saying is that this pattern analysis and this kind of these interesting correlations exist. This will actually feed back and help the work.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I exaggerate to make the point, but of course.
I got you. But if we do this right, there's a productive interplay between the world that Jeremy Howard was talking about earlier. Look at the data deeply for a while. Don't have a lot of preconceptions. With the world of let's understand this domain a little bit
and
better.
what Tom Siebel was talking about earlier. So we actually have we put this into the grid.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have one company that has 100,000 sensors out there, and just by picking up information, finding patterns, we eliminate power outages.
Yep.
And we route power to the right places at the right times.
Yep.
And they are saving the equivalent of a Keystone pipeline, $2 billion a year, just by doing that.
I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. I'm hearing two things from you, kind of a belief that we're in a time of lots of innovation instead of a time of stagnation with innovation.
Right.
And it sounds like you're largely optimistic about what we're going to be able to accomplish and achieve in the future. Am I hearing both those things
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. I think that we're just sitting on the precipice of the next 20 years are going to be just very innovative years.
When you go talk to the people running the large organizations that you're trying to sell into,
Right.
Are they getting it?
They are getting it. And I think that people, and what we have to do is we have to show extreme value. And for us, there's only three ways we can show extreme value. Either we help them grow their revenues, we help them cut costs, or we help them manage risk.
Okay.
And so we have to be able to show extreme value. And they have to be able to show that, right? When Steve launched the iPhone 6 years ago, people were tripping over themselves trying to make cheaper and cheaper cell phones. And he came out with something that was way more expensive. And the market cap of just that business alone is bigger than Microsoft and Google now. And so it's all about extreme value. Hyundai, they sell you a car that is highly reliable.
Yep.
And it's the same price as your monthly cell phone bill. And so the companies that are able to deliver extreme value are doing really well.
Okay, we're going to throw it open to questions in just a minute, so please get your questions ready. I do want to switch gears a little bit, though, and ask you about coaching little girls basketball and what disruptive innovation looks like there.
Yeah, well,
The reason I'm asking this question is that Vivek was profiled not for his business successes, but he was profiled in a great article in the New Yorker by Malcolm Gladwell talking about people who really shake up systems. It turns out that when you were coaching your daughter's basketball team.
Yeah, I know. I went to MIT and I went to another school and I started a company and I did all these things and nobody cares about that. But I coached my daughter's 12-year-old basketball team and I never ever played basketball before. I literally had never touched a basketball. And so I show up at the gym and there's all these other guys there and they're all what's the name of the school, Stanford Junior University or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're all these ex-Division I Stanford players,
Bunch of
7
jocks.
feet tall.
Right.
And here I am, this MIT guy. I've never actually played basketball.
You were a little less lanky than they were, too.
A little less lanky.
Okay.
And then I was already behind because they had given me the girls that nobody else wanted. Some of them had never played basketball. So apparently they have this draft where they get to pick all the players. and they just gave me this team. And so the first day I was terrified, I didn't know what to do. And so I just made the girls run. I said, we're going to run today. And so they just ran.
Nice.
But then after that, what I saw was a big data problem. And what I did
How had this escaped everybody else?
So, well, you MIT guys will get this, and I created a math equation for the game.
Okay.
And I just implemented the equation, and I ended up winning every single game and taking my team to the national championship. So.
I'm serious. Go Google around and find this article. It is a fascinating story. Last question I want to ask.
It's called How David Beats Goliath, and that's the title. So Malcolm's a good writer.
In addition to being a heck of a writer.
But I think just on that, it's a good life story because it really says that if you work harder than anyone else, and I would do a full court press, which meant that you had to work harder.
Yep.
And you think outside the box, then you can be successful and win at anything.
The impression that I get from talking to you and from watching the things that you've accomplished is of this kind of great intellectual restlessness of looking at something and not being content with it and instead saying, why are we doing it this way? Why, I don't care about history and inertia here. I want to go break something. Do I have your mindset about right?
Well, I think everything that's been done can be done better, without question.
Okay. Let me stop there. I want to throw this open to questions from the audience. And since we got the lights in our eyes, if you could, stand up, please, and gesticulate wildly, that would be great. There it is.
Hi. You mentioned healthcare briefly as one area where IT hasn't had a lot of great traction. I mean, there's a lot going on there. It's the sixth of the economy. I was wondering, in terms of bringing context into data systems and approaching healthcare problems better, if you have any ideas or thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a long set of things that I could think of, but just ranging from just unifying different things so that you're able to look at through one interface everything about a patient.
Okay.
Putting everything in the cloud. Also, now we're sitting on an era where truly the hand device, the iPhone, is truly amazing.
Yep.
And that's going to become your health monitor. There's people doing amazing things
Yep.
with that. So I think that, and then a lot of the expenditure is just wasted in healthcare because it's just going into the back office and into things that make no sense at all. So I think the opportunities in that space are just vast, and I think it's going to be an area of just tremendous innovation. And people are going to have all kinds of things that completely change their health.
Is that enough? Is that going to be enough to bend the curve of healthcare costs on its own?
Oh, without question.
Yes.
Without question. I think getting rid of a lot of the duplication and the bureaucracy and the the back office and the process, that is actually a massive amount of money that's being spent. But we're also applying big data, to things like what kinds of medicines do you apply to what kinds of cancers to get the best
Great.
results.
Yep.
And so, and it's going to be highly individualized. We'll be at a point where every individual will be able to have their own kind of.
So this idea of personalized medicine is not hype. It's actually going to come in the era.
Oh, without
of-
question.
Okay.
Basically, every person, you're going to have, big data on every person, and you're going to be able to predict, and you're going to be able to anticipate, and you're going to be able to take preventive measures. And then if something happens, you're going to have very targeted remedies.
I'd also like to point out that was a lovely question because it was both good and very, very brief. We're back way in the back. Stand up, please.
Hi, Vivek. So thank you for restoring my faith in math after the Tom Siebel presentation. Your numbers clearly do add up, and that's great. But my question really was really about, I think about TIBCO and your tremendous contributions in Silicon Valley. Have you ever looked back and thought about opportunities that you as a leader of a great company may have missed? And what would they be, and what would you have done in hindsight? For example, I don't think of TIBCO as an internet powerhouse, but I think of you as a powerhouse in other ways.
Yeah, no, surely there have been many opportunities that we've missed along the way, but there have also been many times when we actually have not done something, and that's been the right decision to have taken. But I feel that our best days are ahead of us. I think we're sitting in a very, very strong position. And in my business, every 5 years, 5 years from now, half my revenue will come from things that I don't have today. So we just have to keep, we have to keep innovating. We're sitting right at the juncture of cloud, big data, mobility, real time, and so we're very optimistic about where we go from here.
Well, I'm going to follow up on that question because one of the mantras we keep hearing is that it gets harder and harder for companies to innovate as they get big, to be truly innovative. If you look into the future and think you're going to get, let's call that half of your revenues of stuff you don't do right now, and you're already a big company, tell us what you think about how you keep big companies seriously innovative.
Yeah, I think there's many myths about innovation, and I just want to spend a minute and kind of lay those out. First of all, you can't legislate innovation. So you can't just say, well, you will invent a new product. It just doesn't work. The second thing is that every city, everybody's trying to be innovative, and politicians can't make you innovative, right? We're in probably one of the most innovative cities in the world, and if not the most innovative, and yet most people would say this is a socialist city, it's not capitalism. So, that can't happen. The other myth is that the way that you create like this innovative environment is, you can bring your dog to work, and you have foosball tables everywhere, and, innovation, so it doesn't work. Now, it's true that some companies do that, but that's after they've already been innovative.
Yep.
So my philosophy is you hire really, really smart people, and you make it really hard on them. You shut them in a room.
Treat them badly.
Well, shut them in a room, cut off the light, cut off the power, don't give them any food, don't give them any water.
No foosball, no food, no
Nothing.
water.
And if you still see little green shoots coming from under the door, then you know you're onto something. And so that's my belief, because we have a habit of even saying to our kids that, oh, when I was a kid, it was so hard, I had to walk barefoot in the snow.
Which was
5
neat
miles.
in India, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and what I say is, look, when you do that, don't do that, because don't do that to your kids and don't do that to your employees, because what you're telling them is no matter what you do, it'll never be as good as what I did. And my philosophy is the reverse. Everybody at my company is a lot smarter than I am. Make it hard on them.
Give them a real. It sounds like you're echoing what Tim told us, which is work on big things, challenge yourself, challenge your people.
Yourself and set the bar high.
Set the bar high, and good
Yeah.
green shoots can result from that.
Yeah.
Vivek, we would love to keep going, but we are actually going to stop on time so we can stay on time for the rest of the day. I'm sure we'll keep the conversation going in lots of forums, but I would really like to say thank you for joining us. This has been fantastic. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.